In the grand theater of history, evil rarely appears in the form we expect. It doesn't always wear the face of a tyrant or the uniform of a villain. Sometimes it wears a suit. It sits behind a desk. It speaks politely, follows rules, and files reports. One of the most haunting truths of human civilization is this: some of the worst things ever done were not carried out by monsters, but by ordinary people who thought of themselves as good. This is not a story about villains. It's about teachers, doctors, engineers, bureaucrats, and workers. People who wanted to live good lives, who loved their families, and who obeyed the law. Yet somehow they ended up upholding systems that caused suffering, injustice, and destruction. Why? How? And what does that say about us? The slow descent. How good becomes complicit. Corrupt systems are rarely built overnight. They evolve. A new law here, a rewritten policy there, a small injustice that goes unchallenged. And slowly what once seemed unthinkable becomes routine. Imagine a young civil servant who joins the government hoping to make a difference. At first, she's told to enforce harmless rules. Later, she's asked to approve a policy that subtly targets a minority group. She hesitates, but her supervisor assures her it's just temporary. Promotions come. Life gets busy. The discomfort fades. This is how systems normalize wrongdoing, not by demanding mass cruelty, but by slowly asking people to look away. Evil doesn't begin with violence, it begins with silence. The psychology behind obedience. Why do good people obey when their conscience tells them not to? A key insight comes from the Milgram experiment in the 1960s. Participants were told to administer electric shocks to a person who they thought was real every time they answered a question wrong. Despite the screams, many continued simply because an authority figure told them to. Incredibly, 65% of participants went all the way to the highest shock level. This experiment revealed a disturbing truth. People will commit harm even when it violates their morals if they believe responsibility lies with someone else. In real-world systems, this dynamic plays out constantly. Orders are followed. Responsibility is passed up the chain. No single person feels guilty. But collectively, great harm is done. And then there's fear. In authoritarian regimes, questioning orders can cost your life. In corporations, it can cost your job. When survival is at stake, even good people become quiet. Self-deception and the moral fog. To live with this contradiction, doing what feels wrong while telling yourself you're still good, requires a powerful psychological trick rationalization. People say, if I don't do it, someone worse will. I have no choice. I'm just a small part of the machine. I can't fix it, so why fight it? These aren't always lies, but they are shields. Mental armor we put on to protect ourselves from the pain of moral dissonance. The more we tell ourselves these things, the more distant our conscience becomes. This fog of self-justification is not evil in itself, but it's how evil spreads through the passive compliance of people who once thought they'd never be part of it. Historical reflections. The hidden hands of harm. Time and again history shows us that systems of evil are powered by the hands of the good. In Nazi Germany, it wasn't just Hitler or his officers. It was secretaries filing paperwork for deportation lists. It was engineers designing gas chambers. It was train conductors transporting victims to their deaths, none of them monsters, but most of them obedient. Hannah Arendt, writing about the trial of Adolf Eichmann, called this the banality of evil. The horrifying idea that genocide can be organized by unremarkable men doing ordinary jobs. In the Catholic Church, abuse scandals, countless officials who were not abusers themselves remained silent. Why? To protect the Church. To avoid scandal. To maintain appearances. They weren't evil, but their silence enabled evil to thrive. In modern corporations, scientists and marketers at big tobacco, big oil, or surveillance firms often know the damage being done. Some try to speak out and are crushed. Others stay quiet, convincing themselves it's not their fight. The cost of conscience. Not everyone stays silent. Some choose to act despite the cost. Sophie Scholl, a German student, distributed anti-Nazi leaflets. She was executed at 21. Franz Jägerstätter, an Austrian farmer, refused to swear loyalty to Hitler. He was beheaded. Edward Snowden, who exposed mass surveillance lives in exile. Chelsea Manning, who leaked evidence of war crimes, was imprisoned and tortured. We revere them today as heroes, but in their time they were traitors, criminals, enemies of the state. That's the burden of conscience in a corrupt system. Truth is often punished before it's celebrated. To speak out is to risk everything, and most people, understandably, are not prepared to pay that price. Is silence always wrong? It's easy to condemn silence from a safe distance, but we must be careful. Not all silence is evil. Sometimes it's survival. A father afraid for his family, a mother protecting her child, a migrant worker without legal protection. In many cases, people stay silent because speaking out could destroy everything they love. We must hold systems accountable, yes, but we must also hold space for the human complexity of fear pressure and vulnerability. The goal is not to shame the silent, but to remind ourselves that silence is not neutral. In a system built on injustice, silence becomes the soil where that injustice grows. What can we do? Quiet resistance and everyday courage. Not all acts of conscience must be grand or public. In fact, quiet resistance can be just as powerful, refusing to participate in cruelty even in the form of jokes or casual remarks. Asking uncomfortable questions in meetings, is this right? Supporting whistleblowers and dissenters even in small ways. Documenting injustice even if you cannot stop it. Creating networks of trust where truth can be spoken and protected. History changes when ordinary people begin to act with extraordinary integrity, even in small ways. One voice might be ignored. 10 voices might be silenced. But 100 voices, 1,000 cannot be stopped forever. Conclusion. The legacy. We leave. Being a good person is easy in a good system. But the true test of goodness is how we act when the system itself is wrong. The question is not, are you a good person? The real question is, what will you do when goodness demands disobedience? In every corrupt system, the turning point is not made by heroes, but by the ordinary, the clerk, the teacher, the doctor, the worker who finally says no more. Because the real danger is not just the evil committed by the few, it is the quiet obedience of the many.